Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Go on the JC route. I'm JC. That's AJ. The two of us are here again, coming at you with more content. This time with, not another team for once, because we kind of went from, top of the pile to bottom of the barrel with SMU. What the hell was that?
Whoa, whoa, easy.
uh, not really. We're switching content a little bit. Uh, we figured instead of leading up to the season, instead of trying to cram as much individual teams in as possible, let's do a couple shorter videos of a little bit more widespread player content. And so, what we're coming at you with today is for each of us who we determined to be 5 of the most intriguing and or impactful quarterbacks throughout this season. Now, it's hard to really define impactful or intriguing because I guess for me, and I'll let you speak to your end as well. For me, when I'm creating my list of quarterbacks, I didn't want to be obvious, right? I didn't want to say, Caleb Williams, right? Because obviously he's going to be impactful, right? So it's not really intriguing. We know he's going to be good. We know USC has a ton of offensive talent on their roster. I mean, he's the reigning Heisman winning trophy quarterback, and he could very well win it again this year, knowing how Lincoln Riley runs his offense. So for me, I wanted to stay away from the obvious, but there's still going to be a ton of names you're going to recognize on my list.
Sure. And I guess kind of just jumping right into it, I had to put Caleb Williams in. I had to,
So
man.
you did the exact opposite of what I did.
I did. And even though the bird is not here, he did the same thing. He told me that he also put Caleb Williams as number one. Just we don't need to say anything else on that. It's Caleb Williams, reigning Heisman Trophy winner, over 4,500 yards, just probably going to win the Heisman again this year. Just an insane athlete. So,
yeah.
do you miss him?
Yeah. Yes. Every day. I love Dylan Gabriel, but Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams.
Yes.
Caleb Williams is not on my list, but I got a name.
Whoa.
At
Okay.
all. He's not on my list at all. And to be fair, my list isn't necessarily in 1 to 5 order. But you will appreciate a name I do have on my list.
Did you put Quinn Ewers?
I sure did.
Man.
So a couple reasons. We talked about Quinn Ewers a lot in our Texas episode a couple weeks ago.
Of course.
He is really intriguing to me for a couple reasons. One, we talked about it at length in several of our recent episodes. Teams need a competent captain at the helm, right? And all reports this offseason are Quinn Ewers is growing up. Quinn Ewers is acting like a leader. He's working out more. He's more communicative with his teammates, yada, yada, yada. Cool. So on paper, it sounds like he's doing the right things. Reality of it is he is set up for success. He's got a ton of talent around him, not only at skill positions, but also at the offensive line. You're returning all 5 starters. You've got your returning Xavier Worthy. You're returning Isaiah Nayer. You brought in AD Mitchell, whatever you want to call it. He's got a ton of talent at the wide receivers. You've got talent in the quarterback room, in the running back room, just not a lot of proven talent or proven experience, right? So where this is going to be intriguing and impactful for me is if Texas's running back room isn't clicking early on, is Quinn Ewers still effective?
Sure.
In addition to that, what are people known to do in their second year, whether it's college or in the pros? The sophomore slump. So I understand this is Quinn Ewers' third year. college, but for all intents and purposes, he's a sophomore.
Agree. Yeah, technically a junior, but
For all intents and purposes, he's a sophomore.
yep.
So even though everything we're hearing is good, will he regress? Because when he was healthy last year, he was pretty dang good, right? One of the highest ranked players ever to come out of high school recruiting. We know he's talented. But is he going to put it together mentally? Is he going to put it together physically on the field? And is he going to take that next step to truly lead that team? If he's able to lead that team, Texas is probably in that conversation to win the Big 12 and go to the CFP.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't and they stutter, especially early on, we'll see what kind of season Texas has.
Yeah.
And it could have bigger ramifications for the entire team and the coaching staff if he's not great this year.
It could, yeah.
So that's why I have Quinn Ewers on my list.
Cool. Number 2.
Who's your second quarterback?
Drake Maye.
I like this. He's on my list too. Let's talk about it.
So ESPN had...
Tell me why.
So first thing that was interesting, ESPN had Caleb Williams, then somebody at number 2, then Drake Maye. I disagree. I think Drake Maye is the number 2 most impactful quarterback behind Caleb Williams on my list. He wasn't too far off from Caleb Williams in terms of numbers last year. And that's saying something. So from something else, like I read when I was making my list, that if Drake Maye was eligible to have gone in the draft this past year, that he would have been in the discussion for number 1 overall, which I agree with. He was that good. So with UNC's wide receiver room, can he, because it's going to be new, right? If what I found is that Drake Maye this year is going to have like a brand spanking new wide receiver room. Like, we'll see if he also has a sophomore slump, kind of like Quinn Ewers, potentially. But I think it's going to be that, for that reason, he's my number 2. Like, can he still be this impactful from his freshman year to sophomore year, avoiding a sophomore slump with a new wide receiver room? And can he put up anywhere close to the numbers that he did last year? So that's what I have Drake Maye as number 2.
You're exactly spot on. That's why he's on my list. There is so much hype behind him because of what he did last year, when in reality, everything around him is changing. Mm-hmm. You're losing players like Josh Downs and Antoine Green. NFL caliber receivers are gone, right? So you're replacing them. Something you didn't mention is Phil Longo is also gone. The offensive coordinator, he's at Wisconsin now. So not only are you breaking in a new receiving core, but you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator, right? I like Mac Brown. You like Mac Brown. He's a good coach, right? But whenever you have a ton of expectations behind a player and you are changing everything around them, they don't always live up to the expectation this following year. So it's very, very possible that his production and his, what he's able to accomplish this year isn't what we would have expected. And so that's what's really intriguing to me, because if it's not what we wanted it to be, North Carolina's probably pretty bad this year.
Yeah.
But if he is able to live up to that expectation, he could very well be that first quarterback off the board this year. I take that back. Second quarterback. He's not going over Caleb Williams. That's not happening. But
no,
he could be in the conversation for number 2 overall, right?
For sure.
So that's why he's impactful, right? Like, they're going to go as he goes on offense. Guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
But the stakes are bigger than just his team performance. It's his pro performance, because if he's living up to the hype, he's going in the first round high. If he doesn't, he may be back at North Carolina another year he didn't expect to be.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
It will be interesting for sure. But was he your number 2?
He's on my list. I'm not going to say he's my number 2, but he was on my list. Number 3, who did you have?
Number 3, another Pac-12 quarterback. I have Michael Penix Jr.
He was actually the first name I put on my list. I love this.
Okay. So
what?
I put him as number 3. ESPN put him as number 2, and I think CBS Sports put him also as number 2. I put him as my number 3. I understand stats aren't everything, but I thought Drake May did outstanding last year, and so he had better numbers than Penix did. But anyway, Penix, 5th-year senior, experience, resilience, stuck with it, went to Washington to kind of hit the reset button and did outstanding last year. Over 4,100 yards, over 30 passing touchdowns. There's plenty to say about Caleb Williams down in California, but Michael Penix up in Washington could give USC a run for their money in the Pac-12. What do you think?
Absolutely. See, Michael Penix was always really interesting because the one image I always have, or I always have 2 images of Michael Penix in my head. One is playing against Texas in the bowl game. The more relevant one is that diving touchdown he had in the COVID season at Indiana against Penn State. That probably wasn't a touchdown, if we're being honest. But in the moment, watching it live, it was ridiculous, ridiculously awesome. And so, because I remember that was just such a ridiculous upset and such a funny season. It was so much fun. Michael Penix is such an interesting case study for me because you're talking about a guy who was talented at one school, Indiana, and you thought he was good, but you weren't quite sure because of the players around him. You take him to a place like Washington where you get a little bit more talent at the wide receiver room. I know they had a couple people leave this year, but you have talent there in the wide receiver room, and you give him an offensive system under Kalen DeBoer that is known for being quarterback friendly and putting up game breaking numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It was so much fun watching him take a whole other step coming out of last year. And for him to decide to come back again because he wants to do more, he believes he can get more done at Washington, is such a leadership move. I adore it. In reality of it is, the state of the Pac-12 this year is actually kind of interesting because Oregon's going to be there, right? You got Bo Nix coming back. You got Caleb Williams at USC. They're going to be decent. You got Cam Rising at Utah. Utah's going to be good. But by and large, it kind of feels like the Pac-12 is wide open this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of new faces and new places. There's a whole lot of rebuilding. And outside of like Stanford, you expect just about every team in that league to be somewhat decent. And so there is quite possibly the opportunity for Washington to win the Pac-12 this year. And it would be a ton of fun if they did, because it means USC lost. But that it's another one of those stories where for him, you want him to be impactful for the sake of the team and the spot in the Pac-12. Reality of it is, if he's not super impactful, he's ruined. He's significantly hurting his draft stock because coming off of last year, it was high. It was high. Let me tell you. And if he doesn't live up to the standard again this year, woof, man. Game you play, staying in college. I always respect people that stay in college for another year, right? Because it's hard, but it's always that gamble of, was that the right move? Are you going to do the same thing? What are you doing to your draft stock? Blah, blah, blah. So that's why that story as a whole kind of intrigues me
Sure.
going into this season.
Mhm.
Number 4. Let's hope we have different names here.
I'm still in the Pac-12.
I'm not. Let's go.
It was close, but I put Bo Nix.
Ew. Okay.
So I was talking with Chris about this, and Chris convinced me. Because Chris also has Bo Nix. Again, fifth-year senior. His first game last year against Georgia was interesting, but again, great numbers. Great, he had almost 30 touchdown passes. He ran a lot of rushing touchdowns, and again, I feel like it's the same story. It's the same story with like Michael Penix. It's the same story with Drake May. It's the same story with Bo Nix too. If Bo Nix, Oregon is also going to probably be trash. Because outside of the last halfway decent quarterback, and actually pretty good quarterback that Oregon had was Herbert before Bo Nix arrived, who has looked a lot better than he did at Auburn. So again, I think Bo Nix also is under that same pressure of adding to his draft stock going into this year and coming out of this year. So yeah, I put Bo Nix as number 4.
Hey, to be fair, near the end of Bo Nix's tenure at Auburn, their coaching situation wasn't necessarily conducive to his success. So
True.
that didn't help a lot. But the thing about Oregon that's interesting is they've got a lot of young wide receiver talent that isn't necessarily proven, but can be really game breaking if they're good. So it's going to be interesting to see how that can either help Bo Nix or hinder him, especially since same thing with the running game. They don't have necessarily a lot of well-known players there. Actually, some transferred out. So honestly, with that situation, we know Bo Nix is decent to good.
Yeah.
Not great. I think the story at Oregon is the weapons around him is more interesting to me. What the hell is going on there?
Yeah.
Because that's something they're seriously going to have to sort through as fall camp rolls on.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 4, I'm moving to the ACC.
Okay.
Mr. Jordan Travis of the Florida State Seminoles. So Jordan Travis, was a really interesting case study for me last year because going into the season, he was good. There was hype behind him, but because of the state of Florida State football the last several seasons, you weren't quite sure what the heck's going to happen because you've got talent, but you weren't exactly winning. And the jury was still out on Mike Norvell to some extent after the whole Willie Taggart fiasco. So it was really kind of interesting to see what the heck is going on there throughout the season. And sure enough, Florida State ends the year as one of the hottest teams in the country.
And I love the fact that you put Jordan Travis. I came close. I really wanted to, but
this is kind of cliche because I know a lot of people have said it, but I'm in the boat of Jordan Travis, and actually I'd say the same thing about Michael Penix. They are dark horse Heisman contenders this year.
Yeah.
If they're able to put it together for a full season and their teams are winning, Jordan Travis is definitely one of those players that is capable of winning Heisman Trophy, especially when you've got talent around like Johnny Wilson, 6'5" wide receiver that can absolutely fly. That's going to help. And their offense was clicking at the end of the year. They're returning a ton of players, like even Jared Verse, who would have been a top 10 pick in the draft last year. He came back because Florida State is returning so much talent. They're going to be a hard out in the ACC this year.
Yeah.
And so Jordan Travis being that man at the helm that leads them is going to be interesting because is he going to maintain that standard, or is there going to be some drop off, or is he going to improve? Man, let me tell you, if he improves, man, look out at Florida State looking because look, the ACC is not very good again this year,
No.
right? Wake Forest, who was good last year, they lost all their players. Clemson, while we think they're going to be good, they had a bunch of turnover. I like Cade Klubnik and Will Shipley, but what the heck is their offense going to look like under Garrett Riley? Are they going to click right away? Who knows? Miami, they got a whole new staff after one season. And realistically, is there anybody else you trust? Not really. So maybe UNC if Drake Mays is going. But I really like Jordan Travis to be super impactful for Florida State this year. And if everything's clicking, they're going to be dangerous, even as early as the first week, but especially as the season progresses. And I believe Florida State plays Clemson in week 4, which that game intrigues me and interests me so much, not only because that's a key ACC game that's going to have implications on not only the conference, but maybe the CFP, but also because it's so early in the season. Like, that's the first. I believe that's the first conference game for the ACC, first week of conference play.
It is.
That can mean a lot. Dipping your toes in the water there. So that game is going to be a lot. And at this point in time, I trust Jordan Travis over Cade Klubnik. So, yeah, Jordan Travis. There we are.
Dude, I like it. Spot on. Totally agree. Like I said, I wanted to pick him, and it was close, but I had to go with Bo Nix. And then
number 5.
Quinn Ewers.
Shit. Okay.
For exactly the same reasons that you stated and that we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we were running through Texas. 100% Quinn Ewers. Can he have that bounce? Can he continue to progress? Can he get better? Will he avoid the sophomore slump? Will he utilize the wide receiver and tight end weapons that he has? And will the running game be able to assist him? Just a whole big question mark hanging over, but on paper, it looks really good.
I'm in the SEC with my final quarterback.
Hold on. Who'd you pick?
Jaden Daniels.
Really? Okay.
So with my last spot in top 5, I was torn between Jalen Daniels and Jaden Daniels, and because I love both, and ultimately I decided on Jaden because the ramifications on LSU's season and their division as a whole was much more intriguing to me, because when you think about it, the SEC West is down this year.
That is.
A lot of the premier programs in the SEC and as the country as a whole are in some sort of transition state this year, outside of Michigan, but they're not going to have any impact unless they get to CFP, right?
Right.
You've got Auburn with a new coach. You've got Bama trying to figure out who the hell is their quarterback. You've got Mississippi State with a new coach. You've got Ole Miss playing ring around the rosy with their quarterbacks. And let's be honest, do you really trust Jackson Dart or Spencer Sanders or whoever the third quarterback they brought in was? Arkansas, what the hell do we know? Texas A&M, okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, that's it. So given that, you've got an LSU team that won the West last year, for one, but also you're returning a quarterback who is dynamic. He can throw it. I want his accuracy to get a little bit better, but he can also run it, right? So you're returning a dynamic quarterback, which we know in the college game is absolutely dangerous. See Caleb Williams, right? You're returning a dynamic quarterback at the same time every other school in your division is down. That that's usually a recipe for success. Yes, you've got offensive weapons that are transitioning and switching out. You got people like Keyshawn Butte that's gone now. They're returning a ton on defense, though. Several offensive linemen. LSU set up for success. I just hope they don't get a sophomore slump as a team under Brian Kelly. I don't expect it because we know Brian Kelly to be a pretty damn good football coach, consistent as hell as wherever he's been. And so for him, assuming he's able to maintain his standard of play or even improve it, honestly expect him to improve it this year because there was a couple shaky games. Like, what the hell was that game they played at Arkansas last year?
Yeah.
Like, disgusting. So I expect him to be a little bit more consistent this year, even more dynamic than he was last year at a time, like I said, where the division is down. That's a recipe for success for LSU. And if they are able to execute on it, they're going to be right back in the SEC championship game with potentially a chance to go to the CFP.
Mm-hmm. Man, I like it. I like it. I thought Jaden Daniels last year showed moments of brilliance, but like you were saying, like against the Arkansas game, like what the heck was that? But again,
you had those moments of inconsistency.
Yeah,
and that's almost expected. And the first year in a new system with a new head coach and a new place, right? That being said, you're not going to excuse that when you're at a place like LSU with the expectations they and their fans have for that team. It's just not going to happen. So he needs to maintain the standard and improve on the standard for them to take another step this year.
Totally agree.
So, to recap, we both had Quinn Ewers on our list.
Yep.
He needs to maintain his standard of play while he's healthy and improve upon it while not letting any question marks around him come into play. We both had Drake May. They're replacing wide receivers, NFL wide receivers, as well as an offensive coordinator. Is he going to live up to the hype, or is he going to drag UNC along this year again? Michael Penix. We both had Michael Penix.
We did.
Horse. Heisman player. Heisman favorite. Heisman winner candidate. Could have left for the NFL last year, decided to return. They're returning a lot. Kalen DeBoer is ready to rock and roll. He is too. Washington's going to be a ton of fun to watch this year. For me, I had Jordan Travis on my list. Another dark horse Heisman contender. Florida State's returning a ton of talent this year. They're going to be very, very good and have a lot of important games early in the season. Finally, I wrapped up with Jaden Daniels. They're one of the more steady programs in college football coming into the SEC West this year where it seems like everywhere else has question marks on what the hell is going on. Mm-hmm. You had Bo Nix.
I had Bo Nix.
Explain a little bit. Recap.
So I had Bo Nix because it's kind of the same reasons as Michael Penix, right? Like he's taking a risk, and he did pretty well last year, but if he succeeds, Oregon succeeds. And he put up great numbers last year. And who knows what they've got going on at their wide receiver room. So another thing, like another reason to put him, that why I did, he needs to be able to deliver the ball and with this wide receiver room. And if he succeeds, Oregon succeeds. He doesn't succeed, Oregon's not going to be good. So
absolutely. And then wrap up, you had Caleb Williams, who is obviously
nothing more I need to say.
He's going to be good again. He may damn well win the Heisman again, but hopefully not. Let's hope Alex Grinch holds USC back again this year. And the Pac-12 is just as fun as it likes to be. Prime on top, baby. Shedeur Sanders, honorable mention. But no, I like this topic. This topic was a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with more content shortly. Like and comment for us. Subscribe. We'll see y'all soon. Deuces. Damn Trojans.
Damn Trojans.
Can't do anything about them.